Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here, and I'm back with a Westworld Season 2, Episode 2 prediction video. In this video, I look at everything from the synopsis to the episode title to the episode trailer to try and come up with my own predictions and theories as to what will happen in the upcoming Westworld episode. Now this episode is called Reunion, and the synopsis is, why don't we start at the beginning? Now this insinuates a meetup between two characters that have already met before. And I think that there are a couple of potentials that could meet up in the upcoming episode. First of all is Bernard and Dolores. If these two don't meet up in episode 2, then they will definitely meet up in episode 3. The reason being is that Bernard woke up on the beach, and he was constantly having flashbacks to how he ended up on that beach. And what we learn is that he ended up at the control center with Dolores' men. He ends up finding Abernathy, as well as he ends up finding Dolores. It's unknown what the two do together, but we know that Bernard is going to eventually meet up with Dolores. Another reunion we could potentially see is William and Lawrence. William has went on multiple missions with Dolores, and even when he was looking for the maze, he went to Lawrence because they had such a long history. It seems that now the Man in Black is totally alone and isolated with no human or military help, so he may go to Lawrence to help him find the door, the very mission that Ford gave him. Another reunion we could potentially see is William and Dolores. I feel like this reunion will happen later in the season, but I do think we will see young William and young Dolores come together again in episode 2. It would make sense to start laying down the plot of the Man in Black and Dolores in the current timeline by looking into the past. And the fourth possible contender is Abernathy. We know that Bernard is going to find Abernathy based on his memories. However, I don't think it's going to be much of a reunion because it looks like Abernathy isn't really human. He's more of a hard drive now. There's no personality or character to him. But let me know in the comment section down below who you think will reunite in episode 2. Now the first story I want to talk about is the Man in Black's mission. Last episode we saw him meet up with young Ford, and he told William that the game begins where he ends and it ends where he began. And I think this has a really deep meaning, and I think the Man in Black is on a mission that is vital to the development of the hosts. And I think it all stems from Dolores reaching true consciousness. In the last episode, we saw Arnold talking to Dolores, and he expressed fear in what Dolores could potentially become.
You frighten me sometimes, Dolores.
But there's also a lot of hope in who she can become. She could be something better than humanity, the next step in evolution. And Ford talks in the last season over and over again about the flaws of humanity. You can't trust humans. And Ford put so much faith in the hosts because they have the potential to be better than humanity. They could create that utopian society. But the problem is that Dolores could potentially become flawed. We see her torturing the humans, just as the humans did to her. There's no evolution there. As she discovers herself and her consciousness, she's becoming more human, more of a black hat. And that's why I think the Man in Black is so important. Because him and Dolores have had their battles, but their relationship stems from love. William was so passionately in love with Dolores even though she was a host. And this is why I think William could have a key role in making sure Dolores pursues the right path. She doesn't become a black hat, she starts becoming more of a white hat. Because William may have done bad things, but they stemmed from a good place. He was so in love with Dolores and so heartbroken that she didn't remember any of the adventures that they went on together. And every time he went back, and every time he went and visited Dolores, he tortured her because he wanted to see the suffering, because that's what made her most real and most human, which is the one thing that the Man in Black always wanted. And that's why I think that this riddle, the game begins where you end and it ends where you began, William will slowly start to discover what that means. And I think what he's going to find is it's going to lead back to Dolores, the one woman who he truly fell in love with. But so far in episode 2, we seemingly see William in a new location. But I personally believe we've been here before. And this is the first time William stood up to Logan. It's the first time William broke out of his shell. And what's important here is that Lawrence used to be on a storyline at this location. And I think William could potentially be going back here for help to look for Lawrence because he's the only person who could potentially help in this situation. And this just shows William going back to his roots, where he started to become that Man in Black figure, and where he started to fall in love with Dolores. And we know that Ford told him that the story will find the Man in Black. So I'm sure he's gonna stumble across someone or something that will lead him in the right direction. And in this case, I think there's gonna be a reunion between him and Lawrence, and they'll strike some sort of partnership. I also think to build on top of William's storyline, we're gonna get glimpses in the past with young William and Dolores. We see William looking at Dolores in the park and seemingly showing somebody about her. And we see William visit Dolores. And he says there is an answer here too, a question no one has ever dreamed of asking. Do you want to see? And I think with William, we're gonna learn his motives and how they differ from every other investor at Delos. They only see all these hosts as organic things that they can shoot to eliminate their deepest and darkest desires. Whereas William sees more of a deepness in them, a richness, a potential of what they can become. And I think his last journey with Dolores in season 1 really proved to him that she seems more than just a robot or a host. Because I think deep down he may be hurt by it, but I think he's still in love with her. And I think whatever this motive is that William is pushing, that is so different than all these investors, we're going to see him come across Logan, and we're going to see that power start to shift, and William become the primary investor and owner of the park. We also see a lot of interactions between Bernard and Dolores. We even see Dolores in a formal black dress accompanied by Bernard. But I personally think that they're misleading the audience. When Bernard is at the gala, he's wearing a black dress shirt. And through his journey, he ends up on the beach wearing a white dress shirt. I think we're going to see Bernard stumble across Dolores, shoot up the control center, and find Abernathy. But the point is that there's 2 weeks where there is absolutely no military involvement. I believe that some of these clips we're seeing is Arnold and Dolores. Maybe Arnold knew that whatever he showed Dolores, when she reached true consciousness, she would remember everything. Because whatever happens in this scene is directly connected with Dolores being outside, in human society. We see her amongst the buildings, and Arnold is there watching her. And then we see the interactions with Bernard and Dolores, where Dolores tells him that there's beauty in who they are. And it seems like Dolores is going to have a fascination with Bernard, because he was key in pushing her to consciousness because of her connection to Arnold. And after these 2 weeks from the shooting at the gala to Bernard waking up on the beach, he has no more trauma. He's not shaking anymore, and he's trying to piece his life together. And that's what happened to Dolores last season. She was trying to piece together her timeline, just like the audience, to try and find consciousness. And that's Bernard's journey this season. If I were to wager a guess on what happens to Bernard, I think he's going to shoot up the headquarters, meet Abernathy, and have a very significant scene with Dolores. And since Bernard goes on this whole adventure and wakes up at the beach that's so close to where the shooting happened, I think Bernard could potentially reprint himself a new body. That's the only way I can see him totally eliminating the trauma. And maybe he could increase all of his specs, just like Maeve did in the last season. That would explain him finishing the commander's sentence.
Mr. Lowe, good to see you. So the circumstances are less than ideal.
And I think pieces like these, we see Bernard walking to that beach, almost like he's in a trance after all the shit he did. And we know that he gets separated from Charlotte eventually because she winds up with the military. If I was to wager one giant guess that has no validity or proof whatsoever, I would say that one thing that Angela found was the entrance into the headquarters, and I think Charlotte and Bernard would have to go there to start their journey to find Abernathy. And I think that's where Charlotte and Bernard could split, and I think that's where Bernard could end up with Dolores. But we will see. And Dolores has one final quote. "Do you even know what you're guarding here? The real purpose of this place? You don't know, but I do." And when she says this, she has no accent. And the reason why she knows this place so well is because she remembers everything about it. Potentially, even the scenes that we potentially see with Arnold and Dolores in the city. It's just a question of who she is talking to. And finally, we see the story of Maeve. We know that she's on a journey to go find her daughter, and she's in the exact same location she's always been. And we know that Maeve finds her daughter. And I think that this plotline will be wrapped up pretty quick, because I think Maeve is going to get to that house and realize that she's no longer the mother, because her daughter was given a new mother that is programmed to be her new mother. And I think that will be a giant jab to Maeve. It seems like Ford behind the scenes developed that as her new cornerstone. And I think realizing that that cornerstone no longer exists could push her to the brink of consciousness. And when she reaches that, we could see her go to Shogun World to maybe push that consciousness on others, like Dolores, maybe potentially becoming the Judas Steer of Shogun World. But that's all I have to say for Westworld Season 2, Episode 2. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But that is it, everybody. Until next time, see you guys later.